Translators have a very challenging job when it comes to producing impeccable and flawless text in English. Yet there are tools out there to help translators produce a better product, including medical text. My name is Doug Wilcox, and I would like to walk you through several of these tools. I am going to discuss the two tools I find relevant when producing medical text for publishing in academic and research journals, technical and non-technical style guides. I will also briefly discuss one way translators can put Microsoft Word to work for them in producing a solid translation. A note before we begin. The syntax, lexical choices, and feeling of English used in medical documents sometimes does not quite feel the same as in other genres found in English. Perhaps it is the degree to which precision is vital in this genre. Perhaps it is a necessity to provide exacting descriptions. Perhaps it is the degree to which people depend on the role of medicine in their lives. Whatever the reasons, producing well-written English content for medical documents, when either the source text is another language or, in fact, the document is simply written in English as a second language, allows for neither shortcuts nor a lack of focus. The stakes are simply too high. In addition to my other responsibilities, I am the language editor for several Poland-based journals focused on medicine. These journals publish both in English and Polish. What we do at my company, Transatlantic Communications, is a bit different than the norm in the translation industry. Most of our translators are native speakers of Polish who translate into English. We work in a team translation model. Therefore, back and forth between translators and editors is the norm, not the exception. My role on the translation team means that I have two responsibilities. One, to raise the level of English of the documents I am working on to an appropriate level, and two, to ensure that the content adheres to a document's governing style guide. To meet these responsibilities, I make extensive use of two technical style guides, the AMA style guide and the APA style guide. I could not do my work without them, yet in many ways they are entirely different in the way I use them. I have come to see that the AMA style guide is the baseline upon which other medical guides might be measured. Take, for example, the treatment of P for probability. As a space-saving measure, the AMA does not put a 0 to the left of the decimal point for this value. The editors justify and explain this decision in the text. While this example may not be a detail of critical value, it does to a small degree highlight the value of the AMA manual, consistency and explanations. Knowledge of the myriad factors present in medical documents is covered in the AMA manual. I propose that this knowledge can greatly aid translators in their decision-making processes while translating medical documents of any sort. The downside of the AMA manual is its size. The hardcover 10th edition weighs in at over 1,000 pages, seems to cover just about everything under the sun, and there are times the explanations can leave one scratching one's head. But in the end, this book can be an invaluable resource to translators. Of the reams of guidance provided by the AMA, translators and proofreaders can reap tremendous professional benefit by reading the section entitled Correct and Preferred Usage. The section will benefit those without backgrounds in the fields of statistics, chemistry, physics, biology, and other fields that weave their way through medicine. No translator can be a subject matter expert in every topic presented in the style guide. This particular section is a good example of how the manual can provide translators with excellent guidance. I would also like to recommend a blog I think translators could benefit from. My favorite work-related blog is written by the editor of the AMA Style Manual, Dr. Cheryl Iverson. This blog regularly sends out an updated blog entry to those who subscribe to it. mostly in the form of Q&A. The questions are thought-provoking, and I learn something new every time I get an update. And then I usually end up applying my newfound knowledge down the road in a document I am working on. Let's look at an example from the blog. Rather than reading this slide, I assume you will find the time to come back and look at these examples after the presentation. However, this is what I will say about these two examples drawn from the blog's website. Any translator who works in the field of medical text would benefit by signing up and reading this blog on a regular basis. Now I will discuss the APA Style Guide. The APA Style Guide does a decent job of covering the required material. As someone who has written a research paper governed by the APA Style Guide, I can say it does a good job at fulfilling its task. In comparison, however, the APA Style Guide is not nearly as thorough and rigorous as the AMA manual. It, in fact, seems to play a different function. But I think translators could benefit from one thing in particular. Both the AMA and APA Style Guides do an excellent job of providing an overview of what comprises research papers meant to be published in academic journals. I believe translators working with medical content will benefit by reading these overviews. By providing the overall scheme and context for each component of a paper, the editors provide translators reasons for the decisions they make surrounding lexical choices, grammatical constructions, verb tenses, abbreviations, etc. In some ways, these two sections provide translators with an answer key for answering tough questions during the translation process into English. Writing that appears in medical content is associated with English that is concise, efficient, accurate, and clear. A medical translation written in English that does not adhere to the basic standards of well-written English presents a challenge for the best proofreader editor. Therefore, I would suggest that knowledge of the non-technical style guides is as vital as the technical style guides themselves. This presentation regards as very serious the challenge implicit in the following statement. If we do not know how to write in English, we shall never be good at translating into that language. This goes for native English speakers as well as non-native English speakers. The three guides I will discuss are the Gregg Reference Manual, the Elements of Style, and Purdue University's Online Writing Lab. With these three tools, translators have virtually complete access to the English language. Sabin's book contains every detail, both great and small, for the English language. Purdue's OWL is an online textbook for English composition, including exercises, explanations, and examples. Strunk and White is an enduring tool that can help writers produce written English of the highest caliber. Purdue University's OWL, which stands for Online Writing Lab, is a simply fantastic writing resource. It provides superb definitions and examples for most, if not all, problems writers will encounter in English. It is safe to say it is aimed at writers of American English from the beginner to the advanced. It offers an abundance of recommendations on writing effective, concise, and efficient English. And I cannot speak highly enough about this reference. The one challenge I have is navigating around and through the voluminous amounts of information. Now I'd like to discuss Strunk and White's Elements of Style. It is a superb tool a translator can use to gain insight into written English and to polish and present impeccable medical translations. It is succinct, the paperback version will fit in your back pocket, and provides examples. It is very usable. Section 1 provides translators and proofreaders around the world with rock-solid guidance for written English. The principles stated in Section 2 make tremendous sense for good writing. A number of influential style guides include Elements of Style in their reference list, including the American Medical Association, the Associated Press, the Chicago Manual of Style, and the MLA. In 2011, Time magazine included Elements of Style in its list of books it felt were the 100 best and most influential written in English since 1923. This style guide is included in the reference list of the American Medical Association Style Guide, which publishes the Journal of American Medical Association, which had an impact factor of a little over 30 in 2013. The Associated Press Style Book, in its section on punctuation, describes Elements as a Bible for writers. Clearly, Strunk and White is not the only style guide that writers can follow. Some writers and non-writers have very negative opinions of Strunk and White. Some of these people have even read it. However, given its usage in academia, journalism, and higher education, the book clearly has a major impact on the written English accepted at universities, accepted by academic journals, and read in newspapers around the world. Thus, it seems worthy of inclusion in a discussion about medical translations in English, perhaps even central to this discussion. A key section about style that I teach my translation studies students can be found in section 2, entitled Elementary Principles of Composition. This is a partial list of the principles presented in the section. I present 8 key principles that I suggest are key for translators to consider when writing in English. What follows is a quick overview of some of the concepts in Strunk and White included in this section, as well as ways to practice them. Mastery of the principles presented in section 2 of the book requires extensive education practice for many, if not most, writers. Not everybody has heard of Strunk and White. The same goes for these principles. However, in my experience, correct and practiced application of these principles is integral for producing writing that meets or exceeds the expectations of editors and readers of medical documents written in English. 1. Use of the active voice. Use of the active voice is a difficult topic for translators working with medical content, where so much of the language is by definition to be put in the passive voice. Purdue University's OWL provides a good refresher essay and exercises on the topic. For example, it says, active voice is used for most non-scientific writing. Using active voice for the majority of your sentences makes your meaning clear for readers and keeps the sentences from becoming too complicated or wordy. Even in scientific writing, too much use of passive voice can cloud the meaning of your sentences. To be clear, much of medical writing requires use of the passive voice, but a judicious use of the active voice ensures a balanced, clear, and concise product for the translator. 2. Put statements in positive form. This requires building a strong vocabulary. It requires an awareness of the English one is writing, as well as a desire to clean it up. There is not much to add to this principle in this presentation that the book doesn't already cover. Other than by practicing it, translators can profoundly impact their writing. 3. Use definite, specific, concrete language. Medical documents tend to use definite, specific, concrete language. By definition, medical documents are full of words of Latin origin. Translators can improve the efficiency of their documents by having a tool belt full of powerful words. Latin-based words are one such solution. In Section 3 of Robin McPherson's book, English for Writers and Translators, one can find a superb chapter that combines Latin-based words in their context, combined with exercises to check one's knowledge of how to use them. Clearly, the challenge lies in not simply knowing these words, but how to use them effectively and correctly. 4. Omit needless words. In my experience, this principle is a constant struggle for any writer, including translators. A hallmark of the written English found in gold standard medical journals and medical literature is how tight it is. There is just no fat to be found in this genre of English. To gain a better understanding of this principle, as well as to practice it, I suggest reviewing the OWL's superb section on conciseness in writing. This section dovetails beautifully with Strunk and White's dictum to remove needless words. 5. Express coordinate ideas in similar form. Parallel structure is instrumental to written and spoken English. These constructions can be very difficult to execute in the medical text found in research articles, given the complex topics and syntax found in this material. However, by maintaining a firm grasp on the correct construction to use, and by taking advantage of the right opportunities to use it, translators will be doing their job on behalf of both the reader and the author. 6. Place the emphatic words of a sentence at the end. In my experience, this is not an easy skill to acquire, yet this simple principle is vital to helping the author's point be heard in each sentence, while at the same time helping the reader understand the text one sentence at a time. By ignoring this principle, the writer misses the opportunity to drive the reader through to the end of each sentence. I would suggest that this is a very easy principle for a translator to overlook, yet by applying it, the translator can be of great assistance to both the author and the reader. Finally, I would like to talk about Microsoft Word. Love it or hate it, Word has had a tremendous impact on writing in English through its spell check and grammar check tools. It is clearly an industry standard for many translators, so it is worth knowing how translators can use it to their advantage. In the following discussion, I am referring to my version of Microsoft Word, as you can see it on the slide. Users of Word can trigger, or not trigger, spell and grammar check to highlight the following issues. I do it by going to Word Preferences. In my opinion, translators should know what Microsoft Style Guide employs when flagging items in a document. For example, how many words does a sentence contain when Grammar Check considers a sentence lengthy? The answer is more than 60. How many words in a split infinitive does Microsoft consider to be excessive? The answer, more than 1. How many successive prepositional phrases are excessive, according to Microsoft? More than 3. How many successive nouns does Microsoft consider to be excessive? The answer, more than 3. On a related note, it is worth reading the AMA Style Guide's prohibition on excessive polysyllabic noun modifiers. The point is, by knowing Microsoft's guidelines, translators can turn on and can turn off the flags to their advantage. Finally, there are 3 grammatical elements of written English that Microsoft will allow you to manage: the serial or Oxford comma, punctuation with quotes, and spaces between sentences. I suggest it is well worth a translator's time to get to understand how to manipulate these settings. Doing so will assist translators in being aware of what they are writing and assist translators in catching, ignoring errors when they occur. Volumes of material exist to help translators do their job. A key task a translator must fulfill is to produce a commission that contains well-written English. Some people may be born with this talent, but many people have to work at this skill. In this presentation, I have discussed the technical and non-technical style guides that can help translators hone the skill of writing English. In addition, I have discussed the use of Microsoft Word Style Guide to help translators use what is the industry standard for word processing. Thank you very much for your time, and I wish you all the best with your professional pursuits.